Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, worshippers of all ages, welcome to YouTube. My name is SeaRaptor, and today we're bringing you a first look at Tier VIII Premium German battleship. This is Brandenburg. Now, if memory serves, and somebody smarter than me is going to have to refresh my memory, I believe Brandenburg is actually based on one of the actual German battlecruiser designs that was never laid down and constructed. So I feel like that if we were to go into the Bundesarchive, we'd actually find the plans for this ship somewhere. So Wargaming is not making this one up. I'm pretty confident this ship, the design for this ship actually existed, but of course she was never built, and yet she's coming to World of Warships because Wargaming has been kind of doing that for several years now, reaching down, grabbing some of these ships that were conceived of, maybe designed, maybe even laid down, but never built, and bringing them into the game for our enjoyment. So let's have a look around this ship and see what she's all about. Now, before we get too far, I want to make sure you understand kind of what you're looking at. So we're going to touch real briefly on her main battery, and we're going to come back to it in a minute. Brandenburg's main battery is basically these are Odin guns. If you own an Odin from the Dockyard event previously, this is the same kind of gun. These are 305mm German main battery guns. The difference is Brandenburg packs 4 of them. You see, she's got an A and a B turret, and then an X and a Y turret, okay? So Odin, of course, only packs 3 of these turrets, Brandenburg coming in with 4. So you're telling, okay, so he's got more firepower, got to be a trade-off somewhere. There is, we'll talk about that as we go. Here we go. Start as we do with survivability, looking at 58,800 hit points. This feels really bad. The only reason this isn't worse than tier is because Odin exists, right? Odin exists, and she's 52,800. So she's 6,000 HP less than this. Brandenburg now, more HP, but yikes, still feels really bad. Other than Champagne, who's also down there, 52,600 HP, every other battleship in Tier 8 has more HP than this. Yeah, that feels bad, right? There's some heavy cruisers at Tier 8 that have 75% of this health. I'm looking at you, Hipper. So, yeah, this is not going to feel great. 23% torpedo protection is typical. There are some standouts in this tier. Of course, Tier 8 battleships, you're looking at the Japanese designs, Amagi and Key. Well, Amagi in particular, I should say. Amagi, Kansas, Flandre, the South Dakotas, Massachusetts, and Alabama all have really, really good torpedo protection, 40 to 45%. 23%, much more standard, much more typical, nothing to get excited about. Armor layout, let's have a check. You expect the German armor to be fairly robust, and you would not be disappointed. 60mm bow strake, 32mm bow otherwise means that she's going to be fairly robust if you end up taking this thing into close range. Her belt armor is 350mm. That's really, really solid. There's a lot of proper Tier 8 battleships that have this kind of belt armor, and Brandenburg joins them. That's nice to see. Deck armor, 50mm here forward, and then 80mm in this amidships means that she's going to shrug off the overwhelming majority of plunging, high explosive, heavy cruiser fire that she will run across. That's good. She's going to need that with her health pool. she's going to want to shrug off that fire, okay? Let's peel away some of the layers. Let's have a look at her Citadel first. Excuse me. There we go. Brandenburg Citadel is very odd. It does encompass all, as you typically see, all the way to the forward magazine, all the way aft, but it comes to this very, very narrow, strangely, oddly narrow, flat point right here under the forward turret. I can't really explain this, but there it is. The Citadel roof, also another 80mm. So if you're dropping dive bombs on this thing, consider you have to get through the 80mm deck, okay? Got 80mm deck armor here. It is 50 through the center, but you don't know where the bombs are going to go. And then you've got to get through another 80mm of this Citadel deck. So you've got quite a bit of armor to get through. Most AP bombs will have no problem doing that. But if you're dropping plunging fire on this ship at long range, you might struggle. She does have a turtle back. Typical German battleship. It's hidden here in the casemate armor. But you see it there, that nice gentle slope. That's 120mm of turtleback armor. That is a lot. That is a lot of turtleback armor. It's going to be really hard to Citadel this ship at close range. I will say that I don't know that Brandenburg is a ship you want to take into close range a lot, but if you do find the opportunity, she is a ship that will probably survive at close range. Certainly won't take, she'll probably take a lot of full pens, probably not many Citadels. Going to have a little bit of a Bismarck and Tirpitz feel to her that way. Okay. Maneuverability and concealment. Open that up. There we go. 32.5 knots. Pretty solid for Tier 8. Pretty solid for Tier 8 on the high end, right? The French still outspeed this, but she is the fastest German battleship at Tier 8. And The Germans are already kind of on the high end, right? Constellation, of course, is faster with her battlecruiser speed, and then Champagne and Flandre and Richelieu. Well, Richelieu's not faster. Champagne and Flandre certainly are. Gascogne and Richelieu, 32 knots. Bismarck, 31 knots. Amagi, 30 and change. There are some Vanguard, 30 knots, but this is pretty quick for Tier 8 battleship, so that's nice to see. Turning circle radius, 820 millimeters, is also quite good. You see here, one of the things Brandenburg has going for her is she has a fairly short overall length for a Tier 8 battleship, right? Think she doesn't have like a South Dakota turning circle, which is 700 meters and change, but compared to most Tier 8 battleships, this is pretty good. 15.7 rudder shift is also not too shabby. This ship ought to handle pretty well. Okay, the ship should handle quite well. What she isn't is stealthy. You're seeing here 15.7 kilometers. That's with her camo on. Stripper down to naked, 16.2 kilometer detection on the surface. Fully stealth rig Brandenburg is 12.7 kilometers. That's pretty standard, right? Nothing to get excited about there. There's a lot of tier 8 battleships in this range. She's not that stealthy. Roma and Monarch both out-stealth this thing. This ties the Vittorio Veneto at 12.7. The other Germans are a little less detectable than this. Tirpitz and Bismarck at 12.9. Odin is stealthier at 12 flat. So, yeah, I mean, she's not that stealthy. Nothing to get excited about there. All right, so let's talk about Brandenburg's main battery. As we noted earlier, she comes to the dance with 4 of these triple-barreled 305mm turrets. These are the same guns you'll find aboard Odin if you happen to own one of those. They reload every 28 seconds, and you see there they've got an 18.5-kilometer range. There's actually, at first glance, there's a lot to like about this main battery. You're like, yeah, these are smaller shells, but I'm throwing a lot of them. And, I mean, it's like, oh, this feels pretty good. But there are a couple of drawbacks that I want to point out to her main battery before you get too excited. One is the range that I just kind of talked about, right? 18.5-kilometer range at Tier 8 for a battleship is not amazing, right? It's not worst in tier because, well, the Italians still exist, and so does Constellation. But it's not great, okay? Massachusetts is about 18.5, Lannon about an 18.5. Like, this can be made to work, okay? But just keep in mind, you are going to have to push a little closer to the opposing team that you might want, right? This is not a ship that's going to be slapping people off the board very early because you just don't have the range for it. The other thing is not shown here, and that is her Sigma, all right? Now, let's talk about the dispersion ellipse that Brandenburg is working with here, okay? At an 18.5-kilometer range, Brandenburg has a 245-meter dispersion ellipse, okay? That is basically the same dispersion that Odin has. Odin's bubble is 251 meters at 19.1 kilometers. So perhaps Odin's dispersion ellipse, the size of the ellipse, is a little smaller. So the dispersion ellipse between the two ships, if you own an Odin, very, very comparable. That's good. Here's the problem. Brandenburg has a 1.6 sigma. Odin has a 2.0 sigma. What that means is that the pattern you throw inside that dispersion ellipse with Brandenburg is going to be far less consistent than Odin, or basically almost any other Tier 8 battleship, because the only other Tier 8 battleship that has a sigma this crappy is Vladivostok, also at 1.6. There's a few at 1.7, Key, Lenin, Constellation. Of course, none of these are exactly known for their accuracy, right? Brandenburg is literally a spray and pray kind of battleship, right? Like that's this thing. Your 28-second reload. In my mind, the kind of the way you're certainly going to start a match in this ship, you're going to load the AP or the HE. You're gonna troll at quote unquote max range, and it's going to be spray and pray, right? You might land some sits, you might light some fires, you might not. Like you're really not going to be consistent, okay? I feel like, and I still feel like this Sigma is going to work against you, because even once a game progresses, let's say you survive to the mid game, a few ships are dead on either team, now you're able to move up and maybe be a little more interesting, a little more effective, start fighting from, say 13 to 15 kilometers. There are going to be times you're going to be looking for that juicy shot on a cruiser, you're going to pull the trigger, and Sigma is still going to screw you. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sold on this dispersion pattern. Again, the ellipse I think is okay. The dispersion number on paper looks okay, but the guns are going to misbehave more frequently than you want, in my opinion. We'll see, but on paper, I'm not encouraged. Okay. Secondary armament is a nice German armament. Okay, these 7.6 range. That's really nice. You should be able to push these out to like what's a secondary build gonna be, like 10 and a half or almost 11, a little over 11, something like that. That's nice. Like this ship, it will encourage you to brawl in more ways than one. We'll talk about that in a minute. These 105 millimeter secondaries, she's got quite a few of these, right? She's got what it looks like about 5 of these going down each side of the ship. They've got 26 millimeters of pen. That'll be great for opposing cruisers and opposing destroyers. The 150 millimeters have enough pen that they'll be slapping around. They'll get some good pen against opposing battleships, their forward, their superstructure, their casemate. So there's a lot to like about the secondary armament here. Certainly if you pump the range and or the accuracy. So she maybe have a little bit of that brawling experience, but Brandenburg is not a ship you're going to want to drive into a brawl very early. Kind of just like, Bismarck and Tirpitz. You don't want to do that early. Now, speaking of weapons, Brandenburg does have torpedoes. That's right. If you've driven an Odin, you're used to this. You've got a quad launcher on each side of the ship with the standard 6-kilometer German torpedoes. You see there, 6 kilometers, 13.7 each, etc., etc. 90-second reload. These are the same torpedoes you'll find on basically every German cruiser in the game. And one of the things I want to point out a little bit, these have got a little bit of overhead protection. A lot of German torpedoes get reset or reloaded or knocked out because they take shells or secondary shells and knock them out. But these have actually got a little bit of deck overhead space that might block some of that. That's nice to see. But yeah, we'll look at. I'll put up a couple of graphics here. We'll look at the main battery firing angles and the torpedo firing angles because that's something I can't look at here. I'll put those graphics up so you can see them from Game Models 3D. Oh, those aren't too bad. Looks like about 30 degrees off the bow and stern. So she's got pretty good firing angles there. That's nice. That's good to see. Anti-aircraft defenses. If you're used to driving Tier 8 ships, this is going to feel a little disappointing. She does put up a decent amount of flak. You see there, 8 puffs at 1330 damage. No, it's 1400 damage a pop, okay? So a decent amount of flak for Tier 8, and the outer ring, 193 DPS. That's quite lovely. Brandenburg does have one thing going for her, and that is the entirety of her middle ring is made up of these 30 millimeter guns, and she's got a lot of them. Her middle ring is actually almost the most powerful middle ring in all of Tier 8. Vanguard edges her out very, very narrowly. The difference is that this middle ring doesn't start until 3 kilometers, and her outer ring doesn't start until 5.2. So it looks nice on paper. In practice, you're going to kill some planes, but the carrier is going to be able to get his planes off, right? You're probably not going to stop him. The goal, of course, you want to be able to impact his potential follow-up drops, and you ought to do that, right? He ought to lose a decent chunk of planes depending on the carrier and the drops they're coming in with. So the AA is, I'd say, serviceable. It's not anything to get really excited about, but the numbers are nice, and you'll kill some planes. That's good to see. Last but not least, let's go have a look over consumables. Okay, what do we got? We have standard damage control reporting. Okay, your ship and World of Warships, you got one of these. Standard typical battleship heal, 4 charges, nice to see. And then we have a choice between spotting aircraft and aerial fighter. Yeah, actually, this is a bit of a tough call. The spotting aircraft there, 20% buff to her range, would push her range out to, let's see, 3.7 kilometers, over 22 kilometers. Yeah, that could be nice, but again, with her questionable accuracy, I don't know that I would do this. I think the spotting aircraft might be. The fighter might be the way to go. I will also point out, if you're used to driving Odin, what's missing here? You don't have hydro. You don't have hydro. That feels kind of bad. It definitely gives Odin her own niche, which I'd like, but taking that away from Brandenburg is going to feel bad. It's a ship. This is not a ship you're going to be encouraged to charge enemy battleships or charge and do brawling with anytime soon, in the early stages of a match, let's say. Bismarck, Odin, both packing that hydro, really does give them the ability to kind of, with confidence, push into areas, know they're not going to take nasty torpedo hits, or at least have time to react to them. Brandenburg doesn't have this problem. She's very much like Tirpitz in that regard. She's going to suffer a bit if she tries to push at the wrong time against the wrong opponent. So yeah, Brandenburg, on paper, I like the idea of the ship. I really don't like the values on the main battery right now. Again, I have not played this ship. I cannot, even if I had, I couldn't talk about her main battery performance. But I just do know that from looking at things right now, I'm not excited. I'm not excited. The look of the ship is like a big giant Hindenburg. I mean, how can I dislike that? But Hindenburg's thing is Hindenburg hits what she aims at. Brandenburg doesn't feel like she's going to have that problem right now unless they make some changes as they super test the ship. In the meantime, guys, that's what we got. There you go. There's your first look. You guys wash your hands, be safe, and I'll catch you later.